Thank you very much for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to join us here at the Lawrence Public Library. It is Jessica Valentin. I am the director of the Lawrence Public Library, and it is an honor and privilege to be able to serve and continue to serve my great city. I've been here my whole life, born and raised in the city, so this is definitely a treat for me to be able to come to the library every day to do my work here. I just want to stand here to take a moment just to thank you all for appreciating the arts. It's very important to us here, and it is something that the Lawrence Public Library will continue to celebrate and welcome into the space. This series is something very special to the people who organized it. You know, we're very thankful to the Friends of the Lawrence Public Library for sponsoring it, as well as the Catherine McCarthy Memorial Trust, the White Fund. But with that said, you know, I just want to welcome you and encourage you to visit us on other days aside from a concert like this. Please visit us. We are open 7 days a week. Our other days on Saturday and Sunday are at the Branch Library at 135 Parker Street. Visit us, give us feedback, let us know what you're looking for here. And if we don't have it, we will try our best to get that for you. But without further ado, I would like to introduce to the mic to say a few words the person who will introduce our featured guest tonight, Ms. Terry Kelly, who has organized this wonderful series, and will share a few words with you. Terry?
Welcome. Today is a very special concert, personally for me, because Mochi is one of my closest friends. We've been friends for many years, ever since I sat in the first row of one of her piano concerts. And she called me later. I thought I'd left my wallet on the chair or something, but she called me to say, I feel that we will be close friends for life. And she was right, because we have been close friends for life. And I'm very happy that she's here today to play for us. So without further ado, please welcome Mochisi Kubo-chan. The first piece on today's program is a Polonaise in G minor. Chopin was born in Poland, and he was half Polish and half French. And he began his studies as a young child in Poland. He later lived in Vienna and then, of course, in France. He became a Parisian. But this piece of work he wrote when he was 7 years old. So it's astonishing to think that a 7-year-old could write such a dazzling and beautiful piece of music. It's a Polonaise, which is in the Polish style. And the greatest attraction, I think, of this piece is the arpeggio that lets you fly across the piano keyboard. And we think, Mochi and I think, that that's what attracted Chopin the most in this piece. And we also think that piano students today like to practice this because they like to play that arpeggio. And Chopin dedicated this to his godfather's wife. He was named Frederick after his godfather. He was a count, so he was named Frederick after him, and this is dedicated to his godmother. So. The next piece is also a Polonaise. It does not have an opus number, but it's number 2. And Chopin wrote this much later in life, when he was 12, as opposed to 7. But the remarkable thing about this is that it's technically very difficult. So it shows that Chopin at age 12 was a very, very skillful pianist. He was able to play all this difficult stuff at age 12. So it's a very beautiful piece of music. And if you're wondering why it says KK, that's the initials of a Polish researcher. And her name was Madame Krystyna Kobylanska. So that's why you see the 2 Ks. You see 1 K for Mozart, and that stands for Köchel, because Köchel put all his works in order. This is a Polonaise, and I hope you enjoy it. It's beautiful. The next piece is I keep forgetting the microphone. The next piece is a mazurka. And a mazurka is a Polish dance. It's a dance that was done by peasants, and it originated in the small town of Mazovia in Poland. And Chopin used to spend his summers in the country, and when he heard this music, he was inspired to do something to it, and he took these spirited, short peasant dances, and he fancied them up and did some beautiful technical and expressive things to them, and he made them into something very, very beautiful. So this is Mazurka in G major. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. I'm sorry. He composed 57 mazurkas, and there were more of them discovered after he passed away. So he really liked mazurkas, and I hope you do too.
Now over 65.
Yeah.
Now over 65 has been discovered.
Mochi just said they have discovered over 65. They knew of 57, and then they just keep discovering more and more, and she said it's up to 65. Wow.
And more to come.
And more to come. Makes you feel like dancing. The next piece is a nocturne. And a nocturne is supposed to represent night music or evening music. It's introspective. And we have to credit the great Irish composer John Field for writing the nocturne. In John Field's nocturne, it's very beautiful and peaceful in the beginning and lyrical, and then there is a storm in the middle of it. It's a tempest, and then it goes back to the still of the night. And so Chopin was influenced by John Field, and this nocturne, John Field would love it because it starts off lyrically and beautifully, and there is quite a tempestuous part in the middle. Then at the end, it becomes peaceful again, and there is crystalline beauty that suggests the still of the night coming. The next piece is Fantaisie Impromptue. And just as the great composers were influenced by folk music and turned it into great classical music, pop music writers were also influenced by great classical music. And if you feel like thinking about rainbows during this piece, it's because there was a popular song written, I'm Always Chasing Rainbows, and it came from this beautiful piece by Chopin. When Chopin moved from Vienna to Paris, he really got into Paris society. And rumor has it that he wore kid gloves of lavender color, and that was quite fashionable in those days. And he really liked being in Paris. Franz Liszt introduced him this way: "Hats off, gentlemen, a genius." And he was right. So this piece was written for Paris society, and it's very fancy and very beautiful. It's very expressive. It has different parts to it. It changes as it goes along. It just sparkles and shines. So this is the Fantaisie Impromptue. There is light and shade in it, and the tone colors change, and it's magical. So I hope you enjoy listening to the Fantaisie Impromptue. If you ever feel like playing that piece of music, you better take a lot of piano lessons and practice a lot. It's very difficult. Well, the next piece, the second half of Chopin's short life, he was born in 1810 and he died, I think it was October 17th, 1849. So he didn't even make it to 40 years old. And the second half of his life, he was plagued with illness. He had tuberculosis and other lung problems. And his music started to foreshadow his mortality feelings. And you can hear the music changing as he gets older. He met up, later in life, he met up with Georges Sand. Her real name was Aurore. But she changed it to Georges. Why? So she could write books, because women were not allowed to write books. So she gave herself a man's name, and she was actually Chopin's muse. She had a summer place in Nahant, and he went and spent summers there with her, and she inspired him. The beauty of her writing showed up in the beauty of his music, and she introduced him to the very famous writers of the time, Alexandre Dumas, I forget what language I'm speaking, and Honoré de Balzac, Alfred de Musset, Lamartine, all the intellectuals, even Turgenev, the great Russian writer. So this was a kind of a turning point in his life, because he was getting ill, and he knew that he wouldn't live very much longer. So the Nocturne is very introspective, and it's almost a confession from him, not meaning that he did anything bad, but the story of his life. And he wrote 21 nocturnes. This is a very beautiful one. But remember, the other nocturne had the tempest in the middle? This one, if you're waiting for a tempest in the middle, you won't hear one. But at the end, there's a great deal of drama, and it has a very enigmatic ending. What? And we wonder what he was thinking about his own life at that time when he composed it. But you can almost hear the fading away. The next piece is a berceuse. A berceuse is a cradle song. A cradle song is a little bit different from what we think of as a lullaby, because a lullaby is a gentle, soft, simple melody for a child. But what they all have in common is the rocking accompaniment. So it signifies the rocking of a cradle. And why did Chopin write this? Because at Nahant he was visited by a very famous singer, Pauline Rialdo, and she brought her infant child with her to visit. And he was so attracted to this lovely child that he wrote the berceuse, thinking of the child. Also, it is thought that he composed this because he knew his own life was ending, and he wanted to celebrate this beautiful new life. So this is the berceuse, and listen for the rocking accompaniment. Don't fall asleep. You won't. The final piece in this program, well, I hope I can say this without crying, because it's very emotional for me. It is a mazurka, and it is thought to be the last thing that Chopin composed before he passed away. And he had just taken a trip to Scotland and he tried to perform this, and it was very difficult, and the performance didn't go well because he was too ill. But he prevailed, and then when he went back home, he died 2 months later. So he wrote in a letter, where is my art? What has become of my art? Where is my heart? Where have I wasted it? I have no strength left. If I rise a little, I fall back down even lower. And you can hear the end of his life in this piece of music. But he worked so hard to finish composing it because he wanted to leave something beautiful for the world. And my husband, George, was the publicist for this concert series. And on the last weeks and days of his life, he sat in bed with a laptop and worked on this concert series because he too wanted to leave something beautiful. So I thank all of you for coming today and sharing this beautiful music. Thank you.
Wonderful.